Get that energy up, fellas. Schedule release. Let's go.
Every year, as the clock strikes on the end of the regular season, we know exactly what teams the Kansas City Chiefs will be playing the following year. But we must wait until May to find out the order in which those games will be played. Today is that day. Let's talk about it.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory, presented by Emprise Bank, our wonderful partner in Possible here at KC Sports Network. This is a special edition of the Laboratory because the 2024 NFL schedule has been announced. The Kansas City Chiefs full lineup, the order in which they will be playing games in the 2024 season is official. And I cannot imagine being with two other people to be talking about this, out of course, but also, there are moments on the calendar every year where it's a big day for people. I think of Joe Lunardi, the longtime bracketologist, the day that the NCAA tournament is announced. Well, we have our Super Bowl today from Matthew Lane. Matthew, I know this day means so much to you. How are we? Happy release day to you, my friend.
Whew, I'm so excited we get to talk about this. This is going to be the best show we've ever got to do because, boy, this is the content right here. I'm excited. Before we get into it, I got to admit, I was wrong. On Monday, I gave Kent flack for saying the Chiefs weren't playing an international game, and they in fact aren't. I will never take a German newspaper or anything at The Athletic right seriously ever again, besides for Nate Taylor and Dane Brugler, of course. I love those two.
It's got personal
never again,
quickly.
Never again.
Dane Brugler?
German newspaper. I said he's acceptable. Him and Nate Taylor. Okay. We still trust them. We trust nobody else at The Athletic anymore after reporting the Chiefs are playing the Panthers. Reporting it, saying it with their chest that the Chiefs were playing the Panthers in Germany. So we are no longer believing anything to come out of German newsprint, nor The Athletic, except for from Nate Taylor or Dane Brugler, Craig.
Wow. Listen, we're taking a week off of the positional breakdown, so we didn't have somebody slandering a European country, Kent. So Maddie had to come in and take some swipes at Germany here.
They deserve it because of the acts of the Bild newspaper. Step your game up. You want
other
football?
acts in Germany's history as well.
No, this is right up there at the top. Wait, no, it's not. But anyhow, you want the NFL to come to your country. You want to be real. You want the NFL to come over there. Step your reporting game up. You can't be spewing facts with your chest like that. It doesn't work that way, buddy. So fix it for next year.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Maddie. I think I need you to send me links of the articles you claim reported this because I'm not sure we can trust you.
They're in the KCSN Discord, Kent.
Oh, they're on every single Chiefs website. If you go back to May of last year, like it was a big thing. That's why when you guys acted like it was crazy that I said that, I was like, wait, I'm pretty sure this happened. And Tucker agreed with me. So then I researched again. It's out there. It was reported that the Chiefs were playing the Panthers. It's just wrong.
All right, let's get into this schedule release.
I got one more thing before we get into it. I'm so sorry, but this is we need to talk about this, guys. You guys, I don't know if you've seen it on social media. There's a big thing happening. It's not exactly related to the Chiefs, but kind of. How do we feel about NBA players being able to play in the NFL compared to NFL players being able to play in the NBA? Where do we fall in this?
Neither one of them can play in their respective sports at a level that they are describing that they can play them at their respective sports.
I think Pat could lock Luka up.
He's like 6 inches shorter, 7 inches shorter.
No, that's not true. First off, and also unbothered.
So, I mean, realistically, I see this, and I think a lot of people think the NBA players could do it because they have the size and they have this other athleticism. But then I kind of go back and look. I can go into any NFL locker room and throw a dart and hit a player that has an insane high school basketball highlight tape where they're the best player on their team. How many basketball players can you do that for? Anthony Edwards stands out, but like how many basketball players do we think have like amazing high school football highlights? Like, it's just, I understand the skill levels and there's no reason for basketball players, but I don't know. I feel like these basketball players are getting way out over their skis here, thinking they're a little bit better than they actually are at football.
I believe Orlando's Jalen Suggs was a good quarterback. Tucker nodding his head in agreement, that's our Orlando Magic expert right there. But
those are the two that jump out. You can find like 5 players just from this past draft class that have insane high school basketball highlights and were like their best player on their state winning championship basketball team. Like, I get it. That's a far cry from the NBA, but like, there's a lot more that seem to be good at both that played football than played basketball that we know of, at least.
I'd like to see Nikola Jokic run option routes. I would like to see that. He'd just be like
the entire time and probably be really good at it.
He's probably like just always open, just like somehow he
Maybe
manages.
he would like it more than he likes basketball, though.
Maybe
like,
there's more physicality.
It would be hard for him to like something less than he likes playing basketball.
Maddie, I want to congratulate. Oh, sorry. No, if you got something.
I was just going to say, I love how much Maddie loves release day because he took us off on a tangent to open the show. Is that what you were getting ready to say too? Yeah.
I was going to say, well, I wanted to congratulate Maddie on getting this thing 6 minutes in without having to talk about the schedule at all. But I'm going to read the schedule out really quick for those that have not seen it, heard it yet. We will start with the preseason because those games do matter. August 10th, the Saturday at the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Week 2. Another Saturday, August 17th against the Detroit Lions at home.
Barn burner.
I don't need commentary after every one, Matthew.
You're getting it.
Week. Short turnaround on Thursday, August 22nd. Nobody of significance plays against the Chicago Bears in week 3 of the preseason. Week 1 of the regular season, the Chiefs open the NFL season with the Baltimore Ravens 9-5 at 7:20. That game is on NBC. Week 2, a Sunday game at home against the Cincinnati Bengals on CBS. Week 3 at the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday Night Football on NBC.
Let's go.
Week 4 at the Los Angeles Chargers. 3:25 game on CBS. Week 5, New Orleans Saints are at home on Monday Night Football.
God.
Week 6, I'm looking for a cruise because the Chiefs are on a bye.
Oh man, we don't get to hear an opponent for week 6 that we knew about for the past year. Darn.
Week 7 at the San Francisco 49ers on Fox.
That's a big rematch.
3:25 Central Standard Time. Week 8 at the Las Vegas Raiders on CBS. Another 3:25 game. Okay, Monday Night Football again. Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
No.
Week 10. Denver Broncos at home at noon.
Get those high knees ready on that airplane, baby. That's a fighter right there.
Week 11 at the Buffalo Bills on CBS. Another 3:25 game.
Roll out the tables for those bad boys.
Sunday, November 24th at the Carolina Panthers, or as my friend texted me, another bye week.
Yeah, Thanksgiving meal right there.
Speaking of Thanksgiving, on Black Friday, week 13, Las Vegas Raiders. Prime.
Putting them in the dirt on Prime.
NBC, week 14, Sunday Night Football. Chiefs, Chargers at home. Moving on, week 15 at the Cleveland Browns. Noon game, CBS.
Dog pound, more like take them out back.
Week 16, Houston Texans, NBC. That is a 12:21 game, a special Saturday game, one of those NBC games there.
Battle for the Texans' name.
Week 17, Christmas Day on a Wednesday on Netflix at Pittsburgh against Russell Wilson. The Pittsburgh Steelers.
Hallelujah.
Week 18 on TBD. My bet is it's on Corncob TV at the Denver Broncos. Week 18.
Boy, I'm glad that we got all those in the weeks nailed down. I'm ready to go now. I'm glad we got there.
Yes. Initial thoughts when you saw the schedule, Matthew?
Oh, buddy, I couldn't contain myself. I was refreshing Twitter all day, seeing what all the people that were mathing out bye weeks and comparing schedule releases across the NFL were saying, so I could hear and see all these games early. I was locked into it. We had to know. And my initial thought was, whew, that's an early bye week. A lot of short rest weeks down the stretch. Not ideal, I don't think, for the Chiefs. But since, we just found out when the Chiefs are playing these teams, this changed everything. So, I just think that, pretty big deal here. I think it's a hard end to the schedule, though. Seriously, though, I do think it's a hard end stretch there through November and December. And that's not ideal going into the playoffs if you don't get the 1 seed. So the first number 1 seed looks pretty important for the Chiefs, kind of on the outside here as we sit in May.
Yeah, the thing that jumps out is the fact that there's so little rest in December. There's a series of games where I believe Matt even tweeted this out. There's a 6-game period between the first 2 games, then a 5-game period, and then a 4-game period. And that is rough when you don't have like a late bye week. Now, I think we all expect that the Chiefs are going to be resting guys in week 18. They seem to find a way to have to get to do that every year. I myself can't wait, being somebody that lives out here in Colorado, to go and watch Carson Wentz just tear the shit out of the Denver Broncos. Like, it's going to be wonderful. But the early bye week is one that it makes things a little bit more difficult. I think we've all become a lot more accustomed to a late bye week with Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback. This is easily the earliest bye week that the Chiefs have had with Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback. And as a matter of fact, per my buddy over at KSN News, sports anchor in Wichita, Zach Martin, he made sure to kind of go back and look. The past 14 years, nobody that's had a bye week that early has won the Super Bowl. Nobody. Like, it's hard. The attrition in the back half of the year, coupled with the fact that the December games are so tightly packed together, the Chiefs have a few players that we're kind of paying attention to. It's like, man, if they stay healthy, if they're healthy at the end of the year, this schedule is not really doing those kind of guys very many favors with it being so compact and having such an early bye week.
My overarching thought is there are 0 favors being done to the Kansas City Chiefs with this schedule. Almost like this is not conspiratorial, but there are just no favors being done to the Chiefs this year. They prefer a late bye week. They don't get a late bye week. They want to give the Chiefs some wonky scheduling when it comes to rest at times in the back half of the schedule. Sure, have an early bye week, and also you're going to have a bunch of short rest at the end of the season. So there's that for you. You might be incurring a suspension to one of your top receivers. Why don't we just throw 2 of the best contenders in the AFC at you to start the season? I'm not going to go out on a limb and say like, oh, this is like some kind of conspiratorial thing, but there definitely has been 0 favors and probably 0 input from the Kansas City Chiefs on what they would prefer for this year, or at least any taken into consideration. It's a weird one. It's a weird schedule. It's one of the weirdest ones I've seen. I think this feels like maybe the earliest bye week that Andy Reid's had, I think, in Kansas City. I'm trying to remember.
It is not.
Okay.
It is not. There was a week 5 bye week. Okay. A little bit earlier. Yeah.
So it was towards the beginning of his tenure. I want to say like a 2014 maybe.
Okay. We've seen a lot of late bye weeks for this team, and they prefer it like that. I don't think they're excited about a week 6 bye. I would be surprised if they're excited about a week 6 bye. I don't think they really care who they play. They'll play whoever they want to whenever. I'm sure they're not thrilled about some of the wonky scheduling, wonky rest times that they have to endure. I'm sure they're not thrilled with that, but I don't know. I don't think they care about who they're playing when they're playing. More just like some of the quirks of the schedule. I find this to be one of the quirkiest schedules I've ever seen the Chiefs incur, and probably one of the quirkiest ones we've seen in the NFL, just because, look, they're playing on every streaming platform imaginable.
Every day literally possible.
Yeah, yeah, they're playing on Netflix. They're playing on Netflix, guys, like whatever. They're playing on Netflix. They're playing on Amazon. They're playing the Black Friday game. Like, it just kind of like the Chiefs are just getting hit every which way from a platform perspective, which, hey, look, if there's one person we need to blame for this schedule, it's Taylor Swift. Because she is just so popular now that everybody wants just a piece of the Kansas City Chiefs. And so Netflix has them now. Amazon Prime has them with, a Thursday night game and a Black Friday game. Like they're
when it comes out in December that she's on a tour that has like dates where she is going to be performing on a Sunday, and that's why the Chiefs are playing on a Friday night or a Saturday. That's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, some might say she'll have a bad reputation. Anyways, let's talk about the toughest points in this schedule. Matthew Lane, give me a stretch of games that you see as particularly tough.
The last 25 seconds of your dialogue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously the end of November through December, like the end of the end of that schedule stretch there, right? We talked about it a little bit. There's very little rest. They put some good teams like in that stretch too. So we're coming in here. You got the Browns, you got the Texans. The Steelers maybe aren't great, but like that's all in the short rest. That's a physical team that likes to play in that kind of weather. You have to go to Pittsburgh. So just those 3 games from December 15th to December 25th. Yeah, that's 10 days they play those 3 teams. And it's not like they're going to be loaded with rest beforehand because they play every 7 or 6 days for the 3 weeks prior to that. It's also 35 days, or that stretch is like 35 days removed from when their bye week actually is. And they don't even have many buys in that really process until you get to Christmas. So just that ending stretch is so rough. And at the end of it, like you're like, okay, well, they play the Steelers and then they kind of have the rest of that week off. It's a Wednesday game. They have that rest of the week off, but it leads into just one game after that. Sure, it's helpful, but it's leading into one game. And if you're the Chiefs, you're kind of hoping that last game isn't that important anyway. So having that be your only makeup of rest, it's a tough look. I mean, that is a tough looking part of the schedule. Some good teams, but more so it's the rest and the style of teams they're playing with, like I said, the Chargers, whether they're good or not, that's a Harbaugh-led team, into the Browns who want to run the football, into the Texans who are a 49ers like base Kyle Shanahan type offense that want to run the football, into the Steelers who want to pound the rock. That's a lot. That's a physical stretch right there on minimal rest.
Yeah, those are the ones that I automatically gravitate to as well. But the first 4 are not super easy as well. Baltimore Ravens, I think we know who they are. They're a good football team. A lot of questions we talked about on Monday. New defensive coordinator, entirely new defensive staff, a lot of holes on that team. I actually think the Chiefs are catching them at the right time. The Bengals might be a little salty, and you're going to get a healthy-ish Joe Burrow in that one. There's obviously going to be a lot of pressure on the Bengals to come in and win that one. They're going to put a lot of weight on that game, especially. And Andy Reid early in the season might just be like, we'll catch you in January. We're not worried about that one. The Falcons might be a sneaky good offense. Kirk Cousins coming into that's only 3 weeks. It's not a ton of tape to be able to study. They added some dynamic weapons there. They could end up being a lot better of an offense. The defense is still not going to be awesome by any means, but the Falcons might end up being a sneaky, decent offense for the Chiefs to contend with early on. Again, life after L'Jarius Sneed. And then the Chargers. You're seeing them for the first time. You're seeing Jim Harbaugh for the first time. Again, early in the season, not a ton of tape. The first 4 games are more about you playing 2 really good teams and 2 teams that are going to look a lot different than they have at any point in the last couple seasons. So you got a lot of surprises that could potentially be on the board there. Still think the Chiefs can come out on top in that stretch. That's a sneaky, scary stretch. And I'm including that week 3 game against the Falcons and the week 4 game against the Chargers.
This isn't trying to dunk on the Bengals at all. I mean, we'll do plenty of that throughout the rest of the season. But I do think catching Joe Burrow early is interesting because he has had his injury, and obviously injuries can happen over, any time. But, like the more games that you're playing throughout a season, there's a better chance that you've been injured or injured at some point, later in the year. So getting Joe Burrow relatively healthy and getting him out of the way pretty quickly, I think is of note. One thing to pay attention to is if the Chiefs do take care of business, I don't think the schedule itself is overly difficult, relative to some other teams that we're kind of seeing. But
I believe their strength of schedule is kind of middle of the pack, which is feels like the first time in half a decade for the Chiefs.
Yeah. And that's hard to do when you are a first place team with a first place schedule. I do think it's of note that let's say the Chiefs take care of business in week 17 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that essentially keeps them, from, that kind of keeps them, locks up the 1 seed, right? Like they get that last week 18 off. They might not play from Christmas Day till January 18th.
Yikes.
They might get nearly an entire month off between.
Do we think Andy does that?
That's the thing. I think you do,
Yes.
because I think he would, but that's 3 weeks of rest that you get. Like,
given how beat up everybody would be, I think he definitely does that at that point. And now here's where it gets real tricky. I mean, like, this is where I don't think they would do it, right? But looking at the Chiefs schedule and who they play, there's a chance that they would have a 1 seed locked up before the Christmas Day schedule. And I don't even mean like, obviously if they're undefeated going into that Christmas Day game, but even just realistically, if they have already beaten, let's say the Ravens, the Fraud Goals, maybe they get the one over on the Bills that they usually don't get in the regular season, and the Browns, the Texans, like they're playing all the other teams you're expecting to be competing for a 1 or 2 seed. If they have the tiebreakers and they're 2 games up at that point in time on somebody, or they're 1 game up and teams like there is a chance going into the Christmas Day game, they might even be able to start contemplating the concept of rest. Now, I doubt it happens. The NFL is usually way too tight for that to happen 2 weeks out. It's not, I don't think it's the hardest schedule, but the likelihood of them sweeping all of the other AFC teams during the season, during the regular season, is probably not super high. It's a possibility that the schedule's very quirky. There's a lot of minimal rest. It's kind of weirdly bunched in the back half of the year, but there's a chance because they play all these other high-end opponents that they could win a lot of tiebreakers heading into those last 2 games.
I would say, and if they get to that point and it's Christmas Day and they've played, if they're in that position, I think they'd still play week 17 out. But I think anybody who is questionable would probably not play in that Wednesday game, right? And
did you get treatment this week? You're not suiting up. Yeah.
Carson Wentz is going to be so valuable this year. And by the way, Craig, that was your reminder that Carson Wentz is indeed a Chief. We're going to take a break. We'll be back to talk about the easiest stretch of the schedule right after this.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Breaking down the Kansas City Chiefs schedule for 2024. We've talked about the toughest stretch, but you know what? It's not all difficult. There's definitely some tough stretches that we've talked about here, but Maddie, why don't we talk about the easiest stretch that this team will face in this schedule? What do you think?
Man, I mean, I don't know if there's necessarily a super easy stretch, because I think the way it would stack up to be the easiest would be, I guess, the stretch of getting the Panthers, the Raiders, and the Chargers kind of right there as it starts to get tough down the stretch. But like I said, that's kind of the entry point to not having a lot of rest. So, I mean, I guess I'm going to flip it on its head. I'm going to go week 3 through week 10. Like, it's a big stretch. The 49ers are in there, but I mean, like, are any other team that I'm about to read off going to scare you? The Falcons?
No.
The Chargers?
No.
The Saints?
No.
49ers, but you're coming off a bye week. Raiders.
Hey, look,
Bucks.
offseason's not been kind to the Chiefs. Bye week might be a tough opponent. You never know.
Bucks, Broncos. Like, there's like one team in there that you're going into thinking it's even close to like, they might lose this game, right? So that's a pretty big stretch right there. That's a lot of games that you kind of think they come out of it looking pretty good, even if they drop the 1 to the 49ers.
Yeah. And even still coming off of the bye week, Andy's pretty good in that scenario, and it's an NFC team that they don't have to hold back. I said that I expected that to be middle of the season, comes early middle of the season here. But I mean, it is, in there. I think that makes sense. I'm looking at the, kind of November 10th, it's Denver Broncos, 7 days later at Buffalo. That's a really tough game. Really, really tough game at Buffalo. But then you go at Carolina and then home against the Raiders. That's the 4-game stretch that I think I'm looking at, because the Chiefs are going to be heavily favored over 3 of those teams in that 4-game stretch. Heavily favored. Now, they might not be favored against the Bills. We'll see at this point in the season. It's late at that point. We may see the Buffalo Bills be dinged up again. They tend to get pretty hurt about this time of the season every single year and then try to get healthy towards the playoffs there. But I think the other 3 games are comfortable enough to where I feel pretty good about it. Even though one of those games is a short week, it's a Friday game, but it's at the it's against the Raiders, it's at Arrowhead, it's on a Friday. Like it's just kind of a weird time spot that the Chiefs, they play pretty well on some of those sort of scenarios. They're pretty good at banding together and not letting some of these external factors kind of factor in there. So that's the 4-game stretch that I'm looking at that I'm like, outside of the Bills, I feel really good about the rest of that.
Yeah, if you classify it down to like just the month of November, I think outside of, and it's going to be hard in the NFL to avoid any tough game, right? Like you're going to have a tough game here or there, right? You're going to have to you're going to have to deal with some, you have to deal with some difficult teams. But I think it's just like that month of November when you're looking at, at home against the Bucks, at home against the Broncos, at Buffalo, then at Carolina and Vegas. And then if you take care of business, and I mean, if you go 4-5 during the month of November and you're coming out of, that game against the Raiders, you're getting a long, you're getting a couple extra days against, before you go into that big stretch with the Chargers and the Browns, the Texans, you're getting a little bit of extra reps there. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I believe, will be on the same rest schedule as the Chiefs. They're going to be playing on that Saturday as well, that Wednesday. So it's going to be 2 teams on short rest playing against each other late in the season. I think the Houston Texans and the Baltimore Ravens are going to flip around and play that game, or that Christmas Day game as well. So it's Steelers, Chiefs, Texans, Ravens kind of playing a cluster of 4. They're going to play each other kind of that Saturday to Wednesday turnaround. Just there's that little comment there, but I think the month of November is a stretch that I'm paying attention to. Did you have something else, Maddie?
No, I think we were kind of walking through it all there. And I wouldn't want to say, to Craig's point, when we were talking about like the 49ers off the bye and being that like the midpoint of the season, it's an NFC team. The Chiefs usually take that a little bit more seriously. This is also the time of the year where the stuff that isn't working to start the year, Andy comes out or after the bye week usually, but starting around week 4, week 5, and then goes up to whenever the bye week is when you start to see the adjustments. They start changing things that weren't working out, things that are working, get expanded on. So like, while I just going back through that stretch of like literally week 3 to week 10, the one really hard game in there is that game against the Niners, but you're coming off the bye. You're at the point of the season where you would start to anticipate seeing some changes coming up for the Chiefs, like offensively, especially. I just think that, that stretch right there could be like just a giant sweep of wins, which would set them up really well for that difficult stretch down there. But even if you want to parse that out into different stretches, I think we kind of all nailed the same thing. Somewhere in that November stretch, the Chiefs should be cruising a little bit. I mean, I think I saw in the chat too, somebody said just week 3 through 5 should be a nice waltz into the bye week where you have 2 NFC South teams and then the Chargers. And I think that's a home Chargers game, right?
No, that's at LA. That one's at LA. I know. It's a home game still. It's just a little less loud home game.
Let's move on here. I want to know the matchup that you are most excited about in the regular season. And look, I'll add the caveat. I know it's tougher to get excited for a regular season game these days. This team has numbed us a little bit. I mean, even in their low points of the Patrick Mahomes era this last season, they scraped around, scratched up, and got a Super Bowl out of the deal. So, like, I know that, some people are going to be a little bit numb to the regular season, but I think there's plenty of games to be excited about still. Maddie, what's the game you're most excited about?
Why don't you guys go first? Let me go last. I think I got a little bit of a curveball here. So
you do.
Okay.
We know it's going to be something ridiculous.
I'll
Here
go
we go
first. Tuesday, because it's the only day of the week that the Chiefs don't play this year. They play Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this year. No, it's the Houston Texans game that's late in the season. I'm a little surprised that they're putting that big of a contender that late in the season for the Chiefs, for both teams, honestly. Like that screams an earlier matchup for this. Again, I would not have been surprised if the 49ers and the Texans were swapped. Like that based on the rest of this schedule makes some sense there. But Houston Texans that late in the season, they're not getting any extra rest before that. They play on 12-15, the same as the Chiefs do. They're turning around. They're playing on a short week again. That is going to be a barn burner. Like, I think we all expect that the Houston Texans are going to continue to be good. And this could have like massive playoff implications in week 16. Like, good on the NFL for continuing to put these games in that scenario. I just didn't think that they would put a game of that magnitude with that much on the line for what the playoffs are. You know, I know they did the Bengals last year as well. I was a little surprised by that. I'm really excited to see the Houston Texans come to Arrowhead on, December 21st. That could be a really cold game for the Houston Texans. That's going to be a fun one.
Baltimore week 1. Because the best game's the next one. No, I'm looking forward to a Super Bowl rematch against the San Francisco 49ers. Like, I think there's always, there's always teams that are looking to get revenge, and there's always these teams that come in extra motivated, and there's going to be that every year. And it kind of feels like the schedule is littered with a lot of teams looking to do that. Baltimore's going to come in ready to, with that same kind of energy. And the Bengals we have history with the Bengals here, right? I think it's the Niners for me. Like, that's the team that I think is probably going to be the most juiced up of all these teams to try to unseat the Chiefs. And like, I know the Ravens will be excited for sure too, but there's been, like you guys talked about earlier, there's a lot of turnover with the Ravens. It's a different team. They've been through this a couple of times already. The Niners, this iteration of the Niners, only a few of the players that are still on the Niners roster have lost to the Chiefs twice in the Super Bowl. Most of them only have the pain of that first one. I think that rematch in San Francisco is going to be insane. The Niners are going to absolutely the fans are going to be insane. They're going to, be vitriolic the entire game. That's the one I'm most excited about. And I think that'll be a fun matchup coming out of a bye too for the Chiefs. Is that the second time that they've come out of bye against the Niners? Am I mistaken? Was it right before a bye a couple years ago? This is me just thinking out loud. So
I don't know.
I just remember they beat the brakes off.
2 years ago, they beat the brakes out of them. Like the week they traded for the 49ers traded for Christian McCaffrey. I don't know if that was off a Chiefs bye. I don't think it was, because it was early-ish in the year, was it not?
It was middle. I don't remember exactly. Somebody in the chat can inform us, or Tucker T. Franklin.
It was right before the bye 2 years ago, says Alex Crouch. Alex Crouch is correct, Alex. By the way. Thank you, Alex Crouch.
I get the 49ers one. It's hard for me a little bit to be super jazzed about that one in particular, because we have seen the Chiefs and the 49ers play so many times that a week 7 matchup in the regular season is hard for them. Definitely for the 49ers, the players, it might mean a lot to try to get that monkey off their back. But we've seen the Bills, we've seen the Bengals, we've seen the Ravens, we've seen these teams beat the Chiefs in the regular season. And then when it matters, it doesn't equate. So really, even if the 49ers win that game, what does that do for them? I guess it builds their confidence some, but it's a little hard for me to be overly jazzed for that one. I like Craig's Texans pick, because I do think that team's going to be fun to watch. Not even that there's a rivalry or anything going there. I just think the Texans will be fun to watch. That game could be a lot of fun where it's situated right there before those final 2 weeks, especially for the Chiefs, where they hopefully can get that win and it matters. But for me, I almost went with the Panthers. It's down in Charlotte. It's right down the street for me. I get to go down there. It's always fun to maybe get to go to a game that's close by, right? And watching the Chiefs just absolutely do just illegal things to that Panthers team that is god-awful would be a lot of fun. But no, I won't go with the Panthers game. It's tough. I almost went with week 18 because everything will be locked up. It'll be over. Just get to watch the backups play. But I'm going with the Fraud Goals in week 2. And the reason is this. That's the best rivalry in the NFL right now. I know Cowboys and Eagles fans are going to yell at me for this. And that's fair. You can have your little argument there. But the Bengals and the Chiefs, fans don't like each other. The teams are always at each other's throat. And last year, we didn't get it because Jake Browning was playing. The Chiefs beat them. That doesn't count. They had a backup quarterback. It just doesn't count. Right. And so the Chiefs have won the last 2. But before that, the Bengals went up 3-0 on the Chiefs with Joe Burrow. They were up 3-0 going into the 2023 season. Or the 2023 playoffs. The Chiefs beat them there. They were looking to start to get the series closer to even, and then Jake Browning's in there. It doesn't really count. I am kind of excited for the Fraud Goals to have to come to Arrowhead with Joe Burrow starting, see how this game plays out. It's always fun leading up to that game because everybody's a little extra amped because it is such a big rivalry.
All I could think about while you were talking is how ridiculous you would have sounded at 1.5 speed there. There were some moments
You're
that
still
you
not
were
over that.
flying through.
Good. I
I'm
want to get
just-
people through the listen, you try to get the podcast over in 30 minutes, but here's the thing. If everybody listens at 1.5 times speed, our podcast, it's shorter.
I was not trying to get it done in half an hour.
I mean, really?
We're getting close to it
I
happening
know,
in like
'cause,
40.
Because you tried to cut off my basketball talk to start. You had to jump into the schedule so fast. Like, man, how quick can we get out of here? The people that listen on 2 times speed are barely going to make it to their car before the podcast is over, Kent.
They should listen to these next, 5 minutes at regular speed. That's what I say. And I might start talking
don't do that.
slower, soldier. I want to hear you guys' predictions for the regular season. You've seen the schedule. You see how it lays out. Tell me what you think the Chiefs' record is going to be for the regular season, Matthew Lane.
17-0. Nailed it.
I was going to say 17-0 as well. Do you want to give a real prediction, or is that your real prediction, buddy?
Oh, it's gonna be my real prediction. I don't know. 13-4 sounds about right based on the schedule. Here's the thing. Looking at it on paper, it said I actually struggled to get to the 4 losses because there's like a big stretch there from week 3 to week 10 where I don't think they should drop a game. And hey, spoiler, when we do predictions, I'm not predicting them to lose to the Ravens or the Broncos either. So like we're getting deep into the season without a loss. So it's kind of hard to find the 4 losses, but knowing the Chiefs, they'll throw out a stinker in that stretch versus somebody like the Falcons or versus the Raiders. They'll have a stinker in there to lose a game. Maybe they'll lose another game to the Bills because they like to lose the Bills in the regular season. Like I can see the path to having 4 losses on games they shouldn't. But yeah, 13-4 is my final prediction. Yeah, that's right. Bills are going to beat them in the regular season. Picking the Bills.
Maddie's picking the Bills.
It's their Super Bowl, so they can have that one because when we get to the playoffs, Maddie, are you going to make the mistake of picking the Bills then?
Was it a mistake? The Chiefs won. I don't know if I call it a mistake, buddy.
I was debating between 13-4 and 14-3. The NFC South does a lot of lifting for this schedule. Like it really does. They're terrible still. Nobody made significant advancements. The Falcons are the only team that I look at them like, they might be a little salty, but the rest of these teams, again, Buccaneers, they're just going to be who they are. They'll play some teams like that tight. I'm not trying to dismiss them, but it seems a little more down than maybe some previous years. So yeah, the Chiefs are going to drop some games. I think that Texans game, I got my eye on it a little bit. Maybe that Steelers game on Christmas, I've got my eyes on a little bit. Just seems like maybe one of those late season drop a game scenarios that we see the Chiefs do on occasion here. But I think they're going to get back to a more explosive offense, an offense that can take control of games a little bit better, a little bit earlier in the season as well. And so I think some of those games that maybe we're looking at is like, that could be a little dicey. I think they can run through those teams a little bit easier than we've seen them the past couple, well, not the past couple of years, but last year especially. So I'm going to say 14-3 for this team, and they lock up the 1 seed with that.
February 26th of this year, the Chiefs win over under on February 26th this year. Do you want to guess what it was, gentlemen?
I don't know. No idea.
10.5 wins. The over under was 10.5 wins on February 26th. It is up to 11.5. I still think that's way too low. I think that's way too low. If people don't remember that, run it back was working quite well until the offensive line literally just fell apart. And me, Craig, Maddie, Briscoe, and Tucker were trying to protect Patrick Mahomes against Vita Vea.
Tucker's still trying to, by the way. Little creepy.
Little creepy. But that team was good. I think they had 2 regular season losses, if I remember correctly. I'm going to go 15-2. I'm going to go 15-2. I know, but this team coming back, I think from last year's kind of struggles, another Super Bowl. I just have a feeling that they've learned some lessons from last year. I think they're going to play at a ridiculous level this year, chasing that 3-peat. I don't get the 10.5 the way it was in February. I don't get it at 11.5 right now. I mean, I guess I kind of get it at 11.5. I think that's there's enough protection in there, right?
I think that weren't the Chiefs still tied for like the highest win total, like over under though, even at 10.5. Like it just everybody kind of starts there.
Correct.
Betting lines they're not aggressive with them, I guess, for like win totals for even the best teams. It doesn't seem like. I mean, 10.5 seems like free money.
If they put it at 14.5, they're getting all the money on the under. There's just such a slim margin for error.
I would have said at least 11.5 is all I'm gonna say. I just don't know why I would have put 10.5 there.
I agree with you. I'm just saying it oddly starts low, but I just remember hearing 10.5 and I was like, that's really low. But then they're like, but they're tied for the highest in the NFL. I'm like, wait, we don't think we're just assuming that no team in the NFL. I mean, I get it. They're trying to like split the difference. They want equal amount of money, higher, lower for all teams. Like they have all sorts of algorithms that tell them how to set these things, right? Like they're a lot, it makes sense for them. It's just 10.5 was easy money. I think 11.5 is still a nice safe bet looking at this, looking at what we have here.
Yeah. I think this team's learned their lessons from their offense last year and they've done a better job insulating themselves in the pass catching department. We'll see what happens with the Rashee Rice situation, but even without the Rashee Rice, with Rashee Rice on the roster for the first part of the season, I mean, they still got two really talented wide receivers. They still got Travis Kelce. Like they've got some capable pass catchers in a different way this year, so I feel good about that. And then the defense, they've lost one key piece. Obviously, they've lost L'Jarius Sneed, but outside that, basically everybody else is back, and so you've got a deep secondary, you've got a deep back seven of players that can kind of move around, mix and match, that have been with Steve Spagnuolo for now 3 years for a lot of these guys. So, that foundation to build off of is firmly there. They've got, a lot of time and experience together. I think that thing's going to continue to evolve and grow even without L'Jarius Sneed being in the mix. So I feel really good about that. So I think this team is going to welcome and embrace the challenge of the regular season. They're going to put themselves in a better position this year. They aren't going to mess around with what they went through last year. They're going to bounce back in the regular season and they're going to run through it, and they will not be playing their starters in week 18. So
specifically to the new secondary, who's the teams that are going to threaten? Like, okay, the Frogles in week 2, right? That's a team that could challenge a new secondary, but they've been a slow starting team. Joe Burrow's working back from injury. Who's the next team that's like challenging your secondary without L'Jarius Sneed? The 49ers, but like their passing game isn't a drop back passing game. So like, yeah, your corners are going to be challenged to cover good wide receivers, but it's not necessarily on an island. It's all about what they scheme up. Maybe the Falcons with Kirk Cousins, but again, like it's Drake London. I don't think so.
I think wants to dunk on Kirk.
Right, but I don't think that's where you're going to be like, oh wow, the Chiefs corners got exposed against who's their wide receiver too?
Darnell Mooney, Rondell Moore, Kyle Pitts,
Rondell,
if we're being honest.
I just don't think that's where you're getting exposed. Not the Saints, not the Raiders, the Bucks. Maybe like they aired it out a little bit. So like maybe you have a Mike Evans Godwin game where they blow up. Like you're shaking
Godwin.
I can see,
Godwin might not be on the roster in 2 weeks.
He may or may not, but I'm just saying I could see that being like the first real game after the fraud goals where I'm like, oh, wow, the cornerbacks could be completely overmatched by the offense that they're going up against. Like, that's just, I'm not trying to predict a loss. I'm just going off the Sneed's not there. They have to fix it up. That could be the first one. We're like, oh, they don't have an answer for Mike Evans. Oh, and by the way, if that answers Trent McDuffie anyway, they don't have an answer for Chris Godwin, who now plays outside a little bit more. Maybe Trey. I could see that one presenting a little bit of a challenge for them to have to figure out the secondary a little bit, but that's like probably the first game after the fraud goals where that might become an issue.
Hey, Chris Godwin, I know this is a quick sidebar. $27 million cap hit. It's the highest cap hit on the Buccaneers roster, and they just drafted Jalen McMillan and Trey Palmer back-to-back in the top 100. That could be the Chris Godwin revenge game.
I mean,
just manifesting the Chris Godwin revenge game.
Is he actually cuttable, though?
Yes, very cuttable post-June 1. Extremely cuttable. Could not be more cuttable. It saves them $20 million in cap space. They have $300,000 in cap space right now. Just throwing that out there.
That's a lot of dead money for next year. So, okay. I mean, yes, it does save the money.
It's really not that much, though. It's not. Look at it.
11's a good chunk of dead money.
You are just ruining Monday's show. That the thumbnail. Could Chris Godwin be a Chief? We'll find out on Monday. Maybe we'll talk about it. Maybe we won't. That's going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later. Just saying, if Ryan Godwin's or Chris Godwin's, I almost said Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling?
Chris,
Yeah,
if
let's
Godwin's
sign him.
available,
He could probably be wide receiver 6.
He's Knuff.